if you guys want to go to your folder and right click on it and go open with, and go to AutoCAD Civil 3D 2016. So the reason that I do open with is with past versions of Civil 3D, if I just double click on it, it'll open Civil 3D, but sometimes there'll be a glitch and it'll open the file read only. So the fix to that I found is I always do an open with. So that's been a habit of mine. I don't know if that glitch has been fixed with new versions. The first version that I noticed this glitch in was 2011. So it may have been fixed in 2016. Okay, so a couple things that I've developed for us so far in our transportation group. So in the Billings drive, our ECG CAD standards drive is G. And I've talked to a few of you in the Missoula office and then in the Bozeman office. Your guys' drive is X. So in our ECG CAD standards drive, I've created a folder for us called Transportation CAD. And in here is where we have our workspaces set up. And so I have copied most of this over to the Bozeman server and the Missoula server. The rest of this will get copied over later. There's some large files, and so it takes a bit of time. So I only copied over what we needed today. So what I need all of you to do at this point is go to your C drive and create a new folder and title it C3D. And it should look like this. Okay. Then go back to your ECG CAD standards folder and go to the Transportation CAD folder. Go into CUI. Go to 2016. And there's a folder called Local Install. What I need for you to do is copy that, go back to your C drive, open up your Civil 3D folder, add another folder called Support, and paste the HDR user CUIX into the support folder. So let me preface this a little bit. A few of you are already on Civil 3D projects. Allison and Craig, if you guys are already on Civil 3D projects or you have used AutoCAD for any project in the past, don't do these steps. Okay, this will change your workspace. If you currently have a workspace set up already, what we're going to do is going to change that. So this is for brand new users in Montana who are in transportation. Okay? And Ryan, the Spokane office does not have a transportation CAD folder. In talking with you, you are already using Civil 3D on projects, and that transportation CAD folder at this point is just for changing your workspace. Since you are technically in a different department, I'll have your model manager in that department. You know, I don't want to mess any of the CAD standards for the Washington department, basically. Okay. Okay. Now, for those that are caught up at this point, we're going to go back to our ECG CAD standards again. Go back to the Transportation CAD folder. Go back into the CUI, into 2016, and into the local install folder again. There's another file in there called C3D Imperial ARG. Copy that and do the same process and go back to our C drive, into C3D, into support, and paste that in here. Okay, so we'll minimize that and we'll go into AutoCAD here. And we'll go to our options. And what we're going to do is we're going to load the profile in the workspace that I've created for us. So at your user workstation, we need to load the ARG file from our network. So we're going to, like I said, right-click, Options, go to Profiles tab. And what we're going to do is, it should be set to C3D Imperial currently. Set it to our random other one as current. Then we're going to go to Import. And you're going to hit, it should go to your local install. But again, if it doesn't, go to your desktop, or excuse me, go to your C drive in your computer, and go to Civil 3D, Support, C3D Imperial. Hit Open. And what this needs to be named as is it has to have an underscore in the space, and it has to have a caret caret and a caret caret on either side. Okay? Then hit Apply and Close. It'll say it already exists. We replace it. And then you go back to Civil 3D Imperial, hit Set Current. We can hit OK. And now HDR user should be displayed down in here. So you now have a workspace called HDR user. And this little gear icon down here in the bottom, you select that, HDR user will show up, and your workspace will look just like this. So the main thing about Civil 3D is that instead of buttons, it has buttons, but the main way to issue a command in Civil 3D is to type it in down here in the command line. So if we want to draw a line, I would type in the command line, line. And then I can pick again, pick a third time, and it'll draw individual line segments. If I want to use a button because maybe I'm used to MicroStation, you can go to the Home tab in this Draw panel, and there's a line button up here. It's a pull down where you can create lines by different commands. Just the top one is our basic line, and you can draw the same line again. A quicker way is you can just type L. And actually skipped over it. If you type something to issue the command, you can hit Enter. Or the space bar is also Enter. Okay? In the Montana workspace that I've created, I've brought in some toolbars that are similar to MicroStation for ease of transition from MicroStation users to AutoCAD. So on the right over here, I've got the line pull down here, or the line button, excuse me. That'll let you draw a line. Okay? To select, you can click and some windows will pop up. If you go to the left, it's a pick all window, so that if you touch anything, it will select that. If you pick and go to the right, it's a blue window. And MicroStation is similar. It will only select it if you select the entire object. Okay? So let's talk about what is known as the Layer Manager and the Properties Manager. So if we select a line, in the workspace that I've set up, again, there's a flyout called Properties. To access this, you can right-click, and go to Properties, or you can just go to this pullout that I have over here. In the Properties panel, it'll show you everything you have selected in this pull down. It'll show you the color, the layer, the line type, everything you can see here, its coordinates, and of course its delta. This is very similar, almost the exact same as what's known as the Information tab in MicroStation. If we want to change the color, we can change it here. This will be an override to that object. It won't be an override to the layer the object's on, but just this object specifically. If you want to change the layer of the object, you can change that here as well. And so on and so forth with the line type and line weight and thickness. If we have objects selected and we want to deselect them, we can hit escape. And same with the command. If we start typing in the command line and we issue a command that we don't want to, you can backspace or just hit escape. AutoCAD is different than MicroStation in the sense that when you select an item and select another item, it'll keep all the items selected instead of deselecting the first one. So that's where the escape button comes in handy, so that you can deselect all those objects. Good practice is to keep your left hand on the keyboard and your right hand on the mouse. Keep your thumb on the space bar, and then you can quickly access the escape command as well. One thing to point out, AutoCAD does not save as you go along, similar to MicroStation. Or, excuse me, MicroStation does save as you go along. AutoCAD does not. So if we want to save our drawing, we have to go up and hit save. Okay. If we, after we've saved, if we even pan, this little asterisk up here appears, and that prompts us that this drawing has been saved with all of the latest modifications we've made to it. So you'll need to come up and hit save again, and this asterisk will go away. If you close it, if you haven't saved it and you go to close it, AutoCAD will prompt you and say you need to save changes to it. Okay? Hitting yes will save it, hitting no will not save it, and we'll close it. Just so everyone's aware. Hitting no will not save it, and we'll close it. So I'm just going to hit cancel. Okay, now let's talk about the Layer Properties Manager. Again, I have a flyout here in our Montana workspace. This shows all the layers that are available in this drawing. In MicroStation, we have a level display and a level manager. In Civil 3D, those two are combined into one in just the layer manager. If we want to freeze a layer or turn it off, we select these little sun icons, and a snowflake will appear saying that that layer is frozen, or on off, as we've known in MicroStation. And we can thaw those layers by checking the snowflake. If we scroll to the right, there's a lock icon. The lock icon, if you have that turned on, anything that is drawn on that layer cannot have changes made to it. I rarely use this. These two levels up here are locked. These levels are used in the template file that I have. So these levels are what the template objects are drawn on. And so I don't want anyone making changes to that template, so I've locked them. Moving to the right, we have the color, pretty self-explanatory. We have the line type, we have the line weight, of that layer, if it has any transparency associated with it. When plotting, it'll show what color that layer will be plotted as. And then also if that layer is going to be plotted or if it is on a no display layer. And you can change that just by clicking the little printer icon. This one is called New VP Freeze. This is a little more complicated, and I'll explain this one in a further training. And then we have a description of the level, or excuse me, layer. And that's it. On the left-hand side we have filters. Select all to show all the levels that are in your drawing, including any external references. Or we can expand this little pull-out that says XREF, and it'll show all the layers in that particular reference. Civil 3D has snaps just like MicroStation. Down here in this tray down here, there's a snap cursor. This is your what's called your object snaps, or OSnap for short. There's a little pull out, and you can check what snaps you want to be engaged when you go over an object. I'm going to add perpendicular to my set. And as you go and you draw, if we type L for another line and we draw, I can go snap to an endpoint. I can type L again, and I can snap to a midpoint, which is a little triangle. Instead of typing L again to draw another line, I can just hit enter, and it will issue the last command that I entered. Draw another line, and then there's the perpendicular snap that I just selected. What else do we have on here? Center of a circle. Geometric center can be the center of a rectangle. Node is like the node of a text object. Quadrant is the four quadrants of a circle. So northwest, south, east. Intersection, we have that turned on. So if I draw another line and I have that intersect, we can go and we can intersect that point with an X. The object snap will display as an X. Let's see, what else? Extension I never use. I'll just say that. Insertion I never use. Perpendicular. Tangent, self-explanatory. Nearest. Nearest is just any point on a line. So if I draw, then that little hourglass shape will let me draw any point on a line. So turning on these checkboxes will make all of these turned on all at the same time permanently. To turn them back off, come back and check it back off. If you want to just turn on one object snap at one time, and like say for instance, I want to draw here and I'm getting the midpoint snap, but I'm also getting the perpendicular snap kind of at the same time. You can hold down Shift and then right click. That'll bring up the menu of your snaps, and you can click one and it'll only display that one snap. So then I can try and go perpendicular to any other object. And it also is inferring these snaps. So like for this one it says, well, at this object it'll be perpendicular out here. So I can click that. Other simple commands that we can go through. Instead of a line, there's what's called a polyline. To type a polyline, or to issue a polyline command, type PL. And a polyline is a much more powerful tool than just a line. And what it does is it lets you issue multiple line segments and they're all connected into one. Let's draw a couple more polyline segments. So if I wanted to trim this object, we can type trim, select our cutting object, then select the object that we want to trim it off to. Excuse me, we select it, select our cutting object, hit enter, then we select the object we want to trim to. And it will dynamically let you know which object will get erased by changing the transparency of the object and adding a little red X at your cursor location. Select it, then hit enter if you have no other objects to be trimmed. If we didn't want to erase that, we can type undo, hit enter. Oh, excuse me. Actually, I think it's just U we type. So when I typed U, it didn't automatically undo the trim, and that's because it was undoing my zoom and pan commands. So zoom and pan are also commands. When you undo those, it'll undo your pan and it'll undo your zoom. So just be aware of that. And that is very different than MicroStation. Okay, so let's talk quickly about our tray down here. Our tray has a variety of different uses down here. Like I said, we have our object snap. We also have ortho. If you want to turn your ortho on, whenever you draw a line, it'll automatically be drawn orthographically. You can turn that off. A shortcut for this is F8. So if I'm drawing a line, I can hit F8 and it'll automatically draw that orthographically. I can hit F8 again and it'll turn it off. Or I can hold down Shift and draw as well. Dynamic input. I always have this off, but you can choose to turn this on. If you draw a line, it'll have these little icons that show up, and you can automatically enter in what starting coordinates you want this to start at. So if I type 200, enter, they'll enter it in at 200 and whatever that other coordinate was. If I want to change it to that other coordinate, I believe it's tab, yep, and then I'm going to type 200 again, and it'll shoot way off into space at 200, 200. If I have dynamic input off, I can still input those coordinates. Down in the command line it says specify start point. I can type 200, comma, 200. And if I want it at a Z value, I can type comma again and type 0. And it'll draw it at that same location. Let's see. So snap mode, I forget what snap mode is. Grid mode, oh yeah, sorry, grid mode turns on a grid, and then snap mode turns it on so it actually will snap. I believe it snaps to these grids here. Then we also have line weight display. I'm sure you guys can guess if your object has a thick line weight. It does not get displayed until you go down and click this guy. Okay, so all your line weights are turned off until you have that guy checked. All of these tabs down here are turned on by what we call the hamburger down here, very bottom right. All of these checks are what is shown in your tray. Now something I want you guys to be aware of is these are turned on when they're blue, right? So if I have my object snap turned on and it's blue, and then I go and check and uncheck this guy, my object snap icon disappears, but it's still turned on. So even if you have this unchecked, it may still be turned on. You'll have to come to the hamburger and uncheck this. So like for me, I don't use dynamic input at all, but if it happens to be turned on and this is unchecked, and I go to draw something and I want to get rid of that, I can't seem to find dynamic input down here. Well, it's because in the hamburger it was unchecked. Okay. So some hotkeys for help, it's F1. If you guys have a question or anything, the AutoCAD Civil 3D help is actually very helpful. It's got your index and then it's got a search. If you're in a command or something, or you have something like a dynamic object selected, you can type F1 and the help menu will automatically go to the help section for that object. The other hotkey, F2, will bring up your command line in a different window. Oops. So if you want to scroll back through what commands you've issued, you're able to see that much easier if you type F2 and issue your command window. F3, let's see, turn my snaps back on. F3 quickly just turns your snaps on and off. So if you don't want to come over here and click that, you can just type F3. And you can do that while you're inside of a command. So if I'm, again, drawing a line and I don't want my snaps turning on, I can hit F3 while I'm inside of a command, and it'll turn that off temporarily until I go back and turn it back on. Okay? Okay, quickly I'm going to talk about the tool space palette next. The tool space palette is going to be explained in much more detail in a later training, but this is where all of our dynamic objects, what MicroStation would call an ALG, or our XML file, and they get stored in what's known as a CivilDS_proj file. CivilDS_proj is the file name for the object that holds all of these other objects. So currently I have one created for our Zimmerman Trail project, and I have some alignments created within this CivilDS_proj file that I can access. This data shortcuts, everything below this data shortcuts is what is available in our CivilDS_proj file. Everything above it, or I should say everything underneath Civil 3D Training, are the objects that are available within your drawing. If I want to access an alignment and bring it into this drawing, I path to it within the tree, and I right click and I hit Create Reference. And that'll bring in the alignment at the coordinates that the alignment was drawn in. Okay? We will revisit this later in a further training where we will actually create alignments and create data shortcuts to them, and I'll show you how to put them into this CivilDS_proj file. So within the tool space, there are 4 tabs off to the right. Prospector tab is what I just showed you, that contains all of your objects. Settings tab is what contains all of our styles for all of our objects. But what I want to show you right now is if we right click on Civil 3D Training, we can go to Edit Drawing Settings. This is where all of our units and our coordinate systems are contained. So if you go to a drawing, I've already set this one to our USA Montana MT83 International Foot. We have our scale, We have the units, angular units. When we have this set, we're able to access our aerial imagery. So I'm going to hit OK. And up in our geolocation tab, there's this little icon over here called map. It's map off right now, but if I click map aerial, it'll ask me if I want to use online map data. Autodesk utilizes Bing Maps in their geolocation mapping. And what I will walk you guys through, and maybe I'll just create a video for you guys to do this, but what I want all of you guys to do is create what's known as an A360 account, Autodesk 360. In order to access the map data, you must sign into A360, and it'll bring in all of your aerial imagery that you want to use. So as we zoom out, it'll populate more aerial imagery. Since we have set our coordinate system to MT83, it brings in all of Montana. So I can zoom out and I can see all of Montana get populated. When I zoom in, if we want to zoom in here, zoom into Billings, it'll dynamically regenerate the map as I zoom in closer. Very similar to Google Earth, except it's integrated here into Civil 3D, and it's utilizing Bing Maps. So again, to access this, we have to have our coordinate system set, or our geolocation tab will not populate the aerial imagery. And we also need an Autodesk 360 account. A360, excuse me, in order to access this. So I currently have one. That's how I'm able to set this. So let's zoom into our Midland Road project for the City of Billings. This is a project we won back in October. Here's the I-90 corridor. Midland Road is right here. And we have one other option for this map data. If we go to the pull down, we can hit Map Road. Well, I guess we have two other options, but Map Road will display just the roads with this gray background, or we can do Map Hybrid, and that will display both for us. What we have available for Midland Road already is we have our property boundaries available. And I'm going to show you how to reference that in using our External References Manager. So to access this External References Manager, you can type XR, and that'll bring up your External References Manager. Again, in the Montana workspace, I have this flyout out here. So you can just go and hover over it. To attach a drawing, you can go to this pull down, attach DWG, and it'll go to Project Wise, and I just want to bring in just the property boundaries. So the property boundaries, it'll come in, when you reference it, it'll come in on the current layer that you have set. So it's currently on 0 because we had 0 layer currently set, and that's indicated by this green check mark. I think I forgot to mention that. In our layer manager, it appeared in the XREFs. It shows all of the levels that are associated or that are inside that reference. And now we have the property boundaries in our drawing at the right coordinate system.